Howdy guys, and welcome to another episode from the Foundry where I give monkey brain advice to DMs along with tips and how-to guides using my campaign as an example. Today, I'm going to be covering 10 house rules that you can use at your table to help make the game feel a little bit more fun or add another level of spice and challenge. I think 5th edition for D&D is amazing. It's very simple, it's very easy to take in as a new player, and it's very easy to teach. The issue with that though is that it oversimplifies certain aspects of the game. It makes them either completely irrelevant or it just doesn't fully address the problem or allow enough creativity in the party or in the play as a whole. The other issue is certain parts of the game are actually more clunky with some of the rules for 5th edition, where we have rules for certain aspects that no one even pays attention to anymore or even follows anyways. Now, I know D&D is all about the DM and it can change depending on the table, because the rules are what the DM determines. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here are 10 rules that I personally use at my table that I think enhances the game and the experience for both me and the players as a whole, and it covers up some of the clunky, weird issues that I personally find in 5th edition. I won't be mentioning in this video some of the more common house rules people have, like taking a potion as a bonus action or the optional cleaving rule for attacking swarms of low-level monsters. Instead, I've broken down my rules into two different groups. Rules that either affect the world's mechanics or rules that affect the player mechanics. Starting with the world mechanics, we have the Boons and the Banes system. With my group, I personally find it more engaging when the passage of time feels more real for the party. This includes traveling from one location to another, especially while they are low level. The Boons and Banes system works as follows. When the party has any meaningful amount of travel time, I will write down 3 negative encounters and 1 positive encounter for the party to potentially face. These encounters are either narrative encounters or combative ones. The players, in turn, can write their own Boons and Banes to add to the pile, but they must submit them in pairs. These Boons and Banes have to be of roughly equal value in terms of either the punishment or the reward that they will present to the party as a whole. And once all the encounters have been submitted for this stretch of time, they are put inside of either a hat or a bowl or some other object that they can be randomly drawn from throughout their adventure. The amount of encounters that we draw from the hat is determined by the party with a minimum of 2 being necessary. This allows the party to explore the world more intimately by having more related or thematic encounters happen as they journey from one location to another. This also gives the party a little bit more agency on the campaign's overall plot and pursuing their own personal stories. By drawing their Boons and Banes periodically, as a DM, I get a better idea of what it is that my party is actually looking for or wanting to achieve as an individual, or just simply things that they want to acquire without having to constantly guess what treasures would appeal to them or what things they might want next. I've made a point to tell my group that at my discretion, I might slightly alter their Boons and Banes to better fit the campaign setting or to rebalance them as a whole, but that I'll also make sure to do my best to not completely ignore the ideas that they have submitted. An example of when I had to step in and change up some of their Boons and Banes had to be for when my group had submitted a Bane to encounter an Ice Troll, a CR 8 creature, while they were still all level 3. I instead changed the creature to be a regular troll, but the Ice variant, a CR 5 creature from Rise of Tiamat. This helped to preserve the original Bane encounter that my party wanted to kind of explore and experience, while not completely devastating them or catching them off guard and possibly leading to a TPK because they're new players and don't understand the strength of certain monsters. Along the same lines as giving the players a little bit more agency over the plot and the overall campaign story, these next 2 rules are very similar in that they both address the same type of problem in 2 different ways. If the party is stuck and either needs a little bit of help or they didn't plan ahead well enough and are caught at an impasse, they can use one of these 2 rules. The first rule is a simple idea of, I know a guy. One player can use their DM inspiration to remember a contact they might have in whatever area they currently are in that could potentially help them with their current situation. This NPC should be able to help them acquire either the information that they need or be able to point them in the right direction to find the next clue. If you'd like though, you can add a charisma check on top of this to determine how helpful this contact might actually be for them. If they roll too low, maybe the contact will require a favor or some type of payment in return for their help. The second one addresses this problem in the "oh yeah, I have something for this" type of trope that you see in many shows. A player can use their DM inspiration to have retroactively purchased a mundane item. They still need to spend the necessary amount of gold to acquire this item though. This prevents the party from getting stuck out either in the wilderness or in a dungeon, realizing that no one bought extra rope, a lantern, or even some tripwire. The idea is pretty straightforward. Playing Item Management Simulator is very time consuming and it's very stale and dry, and it really just bogs down the session just because the party didn't think to plan for a particular obstacle that they happen to run into. And with that, we wrap up 3 house rules that affect the world mechanics. We can now move into the house rules that affect specifically the player mechanics. The first one of these applies to how each player approaches character creation. I totally understand why players enjoy rolling for their stats, because it can lead to an incredibly powerful first level character. However, when one party member doesn't roll just as well as the rest of them, they can feel like their actions have almost no impact on the story since their stats are so low, and by extension, so are their skill checks. I personally don't think standard array or point buy addresses this issue very well either. It gives everyone a fairly balanced and equal start, but it really punishes players that might want to multiclass or have 2 different main stats. To fix this, I personally use a modified standard array with the following values. They get 1 skill with 17, 1 skill with 15, 13, 12, 10, and 8. This small change gives every player an additional 3 stat points to begin with, which allows them to still specialize in their original class's strengths while also giving them a solid base should they want to multiclass into a different class that has a different main stat. Along the same lines of class strengths and weaknesses, I personally use the idea of soft successes for skill checks with my party. A soft success would be any skill check that the party performs that fails by no more than 3. Instead of the players outright failing this skill check for just barely missing the specific DC, especially if they came up with a creative idea or solution for this, I think allowing soft successes helps keep things lively and engaging for your players. If the party meets the requirements of a soft success, then you can present them with one of 2 options. Option A, they can still succeed on the skill check, but there will be a penalty or a consequence that goes along with it. Or B, they can fail the skill check outright and try something else altogether. They will need to make this choice before they know what the penalty will be though. The only time where this rule can get a little bit tricky is when you combine it with this next rule, stealth rolls. It's very common for the group to randomly want to roll a stealth check at any given point in the session to enter stealth mode, or while out in an open courtyard as if it were Skyrim. Instead, I think it'd be better to allow the party to narrate how they're sneaking about and only rolling their stealth check at the moment when someone or something would have detected them. This adds tension to these moments while also not completely punishing the party at the onset because the paladin or the cleric is wearing plate armor. Now, moving away from player stats and skills, the next rule addresses my issues with magic items in 5th edition. I love how many cool and wacky magic items there are in 5th edition, not even including the amazing homebrew items you can find by creators like the Griffin Saddlebag or Loot Tavern for example. But the biggest problem with all these items is that we're locked down to 3 stupid attunement slots. This freaking sucks. It makes it almost impossible to enjoy some of those super cool items out there that are either all about flavor or flair, or they're super situational for when you can even utilize them. My go-to example for this is the Hat of Disguise. Disguise Self is such a fun spell to use with applications both either inside or even outside of combat. But the majority of the time, I've seen it used mostly during roleplay or narrative situations, or more likely than not, in some crazy plan that the party concocted. For combat, there's a major barrier of taking an action to cast the spell that really limits its use and is more often utilized before the combat encounter starts or right after it finishes. Because of how situational the usage of this item is, I think requiring an attunement slot to use it is absolutely ridiculous. It forces you to choose between keeping attunement on either your weapon, armor, or support accessory, or this hat for some wacky fun. Since as most players know, you never know when a bad roll can turn a peaceful situation into a life or death fight, and you'll be kicking yourself in the butt for giving up one of those attunement slots, hoping you can get a short rest soon so you can switch the attunements back. Now, before you post your comments saying, attunement is there for balance, and if you change that the players get too OP, I understand the risks, but hear me out. Instead of using attunement slots, just limit the party to 10 magic items, period. These 10 magic items include magic weapons, armor, potions, and other accessories. The only exception being basic healing potions and a single bag of holding per player. This prevents the party from stockpiling a whole arsenal of magic weapons or items, since they also have to keep watch on how many potions they have on their person. Any magic item or potion that they have that goes past this 10 item mark has to be stored in their bag or some other location, and will require an action to retrieve and swap out with one of their existing 10 items. This now gives your party the ability to have their main magic items along with some support and flavor items too. Now, to prevent artificers from feeling really nerfed by this rule, when they get to their magic item adept features, they can instead have access to 11, 12, or even 13 magic items total. Now, I know I haven't addressed the whole, but now my players are overpowered with so many magic items portion, but that's quite simple. You're the DM. You get to have the final say in what magic items are available in your world and when the party will even find them. You can prevent any crazy mega build the party is planning while giving them more flexibility in what they can use, so they aren't as upset about not getting their 3 legendary magic items that they wanted. Now, if your party is still sulking about not getting all their legendary items, you can cheer them up with either both or one of these next 2 rules. Your players can choose to crit on any attack that they make that also hits. That's the cost of gaining 2 levels of exhaustion. This allows your party to create these epic moments by breaking past their limits to finish the monster in front of them. And this is also represented in them taking on 2 levels of exhaustion for doing so. This penalty is heavy enough that it should prevent your party from potentially abusing it and forcing critical hits, often in one adventuring day. Do take note though that depending on your party size, you might want to beef up your monster's hit points so they don't all get crit on round 1 and have them get killed outright, or start using minions to help deter this behavior. If neither one of those 2 things seems to be doing the trick for you, you can utilize monsters that incur exhaustion levels on your party with their attacks, making it much riskier to do this type of tactic often, or have the party face multiple small encounters in each adventuring day or before the boss fight itself. Now, if you don't like the idea of your players being able to force a critical hit whenever they want, then another way to make crits feel more impactful is to allow all critical hits to have a base level of static damage. Another way to put it is, instead of doubling the dice rolls for a crit, you max out the damage for one set of those rolls and then have the players roll the second set. An example of this would be if a player were to crit using a standard longsword, we would then take the max damage it could do with a d8, 8, and then roll an additional d8 for the second set. This makes the total minimum damage 9. This helps stop the soul-crushing moment that happens when a player finally rolls a nat 20 and is filled with excitement as they roll all those dice, just to have the moment ripped away from them as they all land on either 1s or 2s, making the crit feel like an absolute dud. By giving the crits a static base amount of damage, crits will always feel impactful, even if the dice gods aren't in the player's favor. Now, I know there are plenty of ways to completely break the game with this rule using either a paladin, a rogue, or even a hexblade warlock. Smites and sneak attack could easily 100-0 a monster. But to me, even if some of my encounters get completely steamrolled, I'm okay with that. Because to me, the most important thing is I want my players to each feel powerful and create these epic moments where they truly become the protagonist, defeating the big villain or the big monster in front of them. The sessions where my players have completely turned the tides with either a good skill check or an amazing crit have been the best sessions I've ever DM'd. It's given me and my players these little moments that we could remember from different one-shots or campaigns we've been in together and still be excited to talk about. D&D is just as much about your party exploring and becoming heroes as it is about you, the DM, telling a story. And now finally, we come to the last house rule. It might seem like this runs counter to my last statement about wanting your party to feel powerful and like heroes, but I think the healing system in 5th edition is garbage. It's stupid to me that a player at 1 HP has the same fighting strength as a fully rested one, and can take mortal wound after mortal wound in the same combat encounter like it's no big deal. Now, I might be biased as a FromSoft or Berserk fan, but I think a hero who faces struggles and their own mortality is way more interesting and engaging than one who just wins. So to fix this issue, I have a penalty system of sorts for when a player goes down. I've seen and read many different approaches to this problem in 5th edition and even other game systems like Pathfinder, but to me, each of these has their own flaws and are a bit clunky. Now, don't get me wrong, my solution is also a bit clunky and it's no better than these other ones, but I think it's a little bit easier. It's not as strict or punishing as the optional rules in 5th edition, but it's also not as clunky and mechanic heavy like in Pathfinder. I think my solution gets the job done well without always using exhaustion as the punishment, especially since I personally use the house rule that allows the party to willingly give themselves exhaustion levels. My system works as follows. When a player is reduced to 0 hit points, they fall unconscious and gain a lasting wound counter. A lasting wound counts as an automatic failed death save and can stack up to 3 times, at which point going down a 4th time will result in death. Lasting wounds can be removed in one of the following ways: either a long rest, casting lesser or greater restoration, a healing spell upcasted at 4th level or higher, and lastly, using 5 points of lay on hands from a paladin. Each of these options will remove only 1 lasting wound, but they can be combined in any way you want to remove more of them. The only exception to this is when a player rolls a natural 20 on one of their death saving throws. This not only brings them back up to 1 HP, but it will also remove their lasting wounds. This rule really just prevents the super cheeky tactics of keeping the party at pretty much 1 HP in every single fight with 0 repercussions for reckless behavior, and just keeping the healer hidden nearby with healing word or something like that, giving everyone 1d4 HP every single round, because who cares if they can get killed in 1 hit again if they still get a full round of actions before that happens. It's so stupid, and I think this helps make it feel a little bit more purposeful when they perform actions during combat. And with that, we now have 10 new house rules that you could potentially use at your table. Hopefully you found some of these house rules interesting or potentially helpful to address some issues you might be having at your table. If you did, like this video and comment down below which house rules you're going to use, and even some house rules that you personally have at your table that you think addresses some of these problems or other problems that you run into DMing. Feel free to check out my other videos where I also give other tips and advice for different aspects of D&D, or if you're looking for some fun encounters to throw at your party, go ahead and check out my environment encounter playlist where I go over uncommon encounters for each different environment for each different tier of play. However, I am breaking it down slightly differently from my first videos, where I'll be focusing on the level ranges that parties tend to stay at the most in each tier of play. Yeah, see you guys next time.